Wendell's World in Sports, a sports talk podcast that is unique, making you laugh and making you think. Talking about sports with a different twist, with a style and flair as attractive and beautiful as my Alexa Bliss. I go after the everyday of sports topics with the fury of Tyson, running over the competition like I was a bison, slicing through the bad taste and nonsense like a hot knife through butter. For those coming after me unprepared, take yourself back to the podcasting gutter. If I were a prospect in the podcasting draft, I'd be selected number one like Trayvon Walker based on my skills as an exceptional sports talker, my talent generational, my rhythm and style beyond sensational. Great like the Say Hey Kid they named Willie, my podcast being heard from Queensland to Philly. You say my sports talk podcast can't compete with yours? Man, don't be so damn silly. For the 2022 NFL season, I discuss which teams we are believing will be championship competing, the chances of the LA Rams repeating, Justin Herbert's impact on the sport increasing, and I do it in a fashion you'll find pleasing. Giving my thoughts and opinions about who's the best team in the NFL, how Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos gel. Will Cincinnati go back to being Bungles or remain Bengals? These mysteries and other NFL topics I will untangle. So watch and listen to my podcast and have yourself a blast. Download and subscribe real fast. Can you dig what I'm saying like my man Shaft? Wendell's World in Sports. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and tune in anywhere, anyhow, in any way you listen to your favorite podcast.
Right on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most unique, entertaining, and compelling sports talk podcast you'll ever listen to.
Let's be great. Let's be great.
Wendell's World in Sports with the one and only Wendell Wallace.
Giannis charging down the lane to the rim, double clutch, no good, tipped in. Giannis tipped it home.
Subscribe, rate, and review anywhere and everywhere you listen to this and all your favorite podcasts. And now, from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Rip, Roaring, and ready to rumble, Wendell Wallace.
And welcome to Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. A lot of things to get down on and discuss today in the world of sports. Bonjour, bonsoir, good morning, good abend, que pasa, shalom, wassalamu alaikum, konnichiwa, namaste. Wendell Wallace here of Wendell's World of Sports. Special dedication for those who are watching this on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. I really very much appreciate it. If you could do this, if you like what you're seeing right now, I'm speaking mainly with the females, attractive females who are single between the ages of 42 and 48. If you enjoy what you're watching right now, and I know you are, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Wendell's World of Sports, and like this video. But if you would rather just listen to this episode or listen to an episode of Wendell's World of Sports anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcast, just go ahead and include my podcast with that and subscribe, download, rate, review, and most importantly, enjoy the most unique, entertaining, thought-provoking sports talk podcast that you can listen to, and you don't have to look at this face. Woo-wee, what a bargain, huh? Wendell's World of Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. All right, let's go ahead and let's get into some sports, shall we? I know there's been some things happening in the NFL, and I want to get into the Kyler Murray thing, and I'll get into the Kyler Murray thing on my audio podcast, which I'm going to be dropping this upcoming Monday or Tuesday. But I want to just kind of mention the fact that Kyler Murray got himself a bag, became the second highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And what does that mean now for Kyler Murray? What does that mean now for Cliff Kingsbury moving forward now? What does that mean for the expectations for the Arizona Cardinals? What does that mean for a guy who I think in Kyler Murray for the last couple of seasons, when you take a look at the beginning half of the season and then towards the end of the season, the pattern is reminiscent, I think, of Russell Wilson, another guy who has had strong first halves of the season when he was playing for the Seattle Seahawks the last couple of years, but then faded near the end. And when you're speaking about real MVP candidates, and you're speaking about those MVP candidates because of the success they had, not only from an individual standpoint, but also from a team standpoint. I've thought for the last couple of years that Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson were right there, leading the pack, shall we say, in terms of garnering honors for the MVP. But once the second half happens, not only do their effectiveness in terms of the statistical, when you're speaking about Murray, when you're speaking about Wilson, kind of fall off the charts a little bit. The same with the success of their team. When you're speaking about Arizona and you're speaking about then Seattle, the team that Russell Wilson was quarterbacking. And you take a look at the Arizona Cardinals season last season when they started off extremely well. Was one of the best teams as far as the power rankings were concerned record-wise in the NFL going into that Thursday night game against the Green Bay Packers, where they lost, and it seemed after that the road got a lot bumpier for the Arizona Cardinals and for Kyler Murray, and then that embarrassing display that they had in their first-round matchup in the playoffs against the Los Angeles Rams. And Murray, after the game, voicing his disgust and his frustration and his anger and his disappointment, not only in his play but also in the team play. And then there were some rumors or innuendos, or somebody said this, that, and the other about Kyler Murray not being a true leader and Kyler Murray not being mature, and Kyler Murray, a situation where, are you really going to give this guy who has displayed nothing in terms of true leadership, in terms of true value, and the team leading them to a championship is concerned, or a deep playoff run? Are you sure that you want to give this guy a big bag? Are you sure you want to re-sign this guy? So there were thoughts and feelings and stories and rumors about all of that. There was a situation where Kyler Murray deleted his Arizona Cardinals organization thing from his Facebook page or from his social media, Twitter. I don't know what it was, but so we had that little bit of drama, just a little bit of drama, just a couple of embers, not anywhere near the inferno, which was last offseason when it was Aaron Rodgers all the time, all the way, all the day, speaking about he wanted to be traded and all these type of things. So it seems that everything has been rectified with the relationship for now between the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray, in terms of he got himself his bag, he's got himself his money. All right. So we're going to go on the assumption that all of this stuff about you not being a great leader and you not being immature, we're going to go on the assumption that was falsehood, that was nonsense, that was bunk. All right. That's what giving this type of money means when you're speaking about now the responsibilities toward Kyler Murray. Now, all of a sudden, when you have a big number attached to your name, when you're going to be making more money than Tom Brady, when you're going to be making more money than Aaron Rodgers, when you're going to be making all that money, all of a sudden now the expectation changes. All of a sudden now the impact that you have on your team changes. Now, all of a sudden, not only the praise when you do well changes, but also the scrutiny when you do not do well and your team does not do well, is now going to be increased, because now you have that moniker next to your name. Big money, big bank, big bag, highly paid. So when we're speaking about the play of Kyler Murray, when we're speaking about the impact of Kyler Murray, whether it's going to be fantastic or whether it's going to be crappy, the number that you signed, the amount of money that you signed for, whether the criticism is going to be on the positive side or the negative side, is going to be attached to this, how much money he's making. So if he was making the type of money, if he wasn't paid like a top 10 quarterback, then it would be another story. But this is a situation now, the expectations is now squarely on the shoulders for the Arizona Cardinals on Kyler Murray. You're paying him like a franchise quarterback. In fact, you're paying him more than just being a franchise quarterback. You're now paying Kyler Murray like he is the key for you guys to win Super Bowls, not division titles, even though the NFC West is very stacked and loaded for the most part with the San Francisco 49ers and such. But now this is a situation where Kyler Murray, it's time for you to do your thing and lead us to the promised land, because we're paying you like you're going to go down as the greatest quarterback in Arizona, St. Louis/Arizona Cardinals history. Better than Jim Hart. Better than the short stint of Kurt Warner. Better than Jake Plummer. Better than all those guys. So the expectation and the responsibility for Kyler Murray to do his thing is going to be heightened greatly now that he signed his contract. But then again, I'll get into more of that. And I also want to get into what does that mean for the relationship, the working relationship between the organization, the Arizona Cardinals organization, head coach Cliff Kingsbury, and Kyler Murray. Those two, especially Murray and Kingsbury, they're tied to the hip now. So what does this 5-year contract mean for not only Kyler Murray, but also for Cliff Kingsbury? So I'll get into all of that when I discuss what's happening in the world of the NFL on my audio version of Wendell's World in Sports, the audio episode of Wendell's World in Sports, anywhere where you find and listen to your favorite podcast. Wendell's World in Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. But I want to concentrate just a little bit more on college football because the games that mean something are coming up first. And you speak, even though NFL is king here in the divided, racist, ignorant, selfish states of America, there is a good portion or a decent portion of the country that adores, that reveres, that are disciples of college football. When you're speaking about, such regions as Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Columbus, Ohio, and Norman and Stillwater, Oklahoma, and Austin, Texas, and South Carolina, Charleston, Columbia, and Clemson, South Carolina. When you're speaking about those places, you're speaking about Auburn, Alabama. You're speaking about those regions. You're speaking about those communities. You're speaking about those areas as far as their college football team being almost a way of life for those guys. So for me, while the NFL is the NFL for me in terms of, I love the NFL. But, I also very much like college football also. And the games that are coming up, it just kind of falls into the pattern or the routine of when I start my football watching for the year. I mean, it's official, as I mentioned before. I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts about during this down period, when baseball is the only thing to keep us occupied for the most part in terms of our sports watching is concerned on a nightly consistent basis. The fact that now we can go ahead and kind of get our honey-do list done and get our chores done and take our vacations and, make sure that when the football season starts from last week of August all the way up till January, that we're not going to have too many distractions. We're not going to have too many roadblocks or obstacles that are going to take us away from watching football on a Saturday or a Sunday, or if you prefer, a Thursday, Saturday, Sunday night, if you enjoy both college and NFL football. So, this is the time. This is the period. So, for me, with the most important games when you're speaking about between college and pro, starting first in college, when you have such dynamite games as Ohio State and Notre Dame and Oregon and Georgia and others, then, I want to concentrate first, especially with this podcast, I want to concentrate mainly on college football, taking a look at college football, and quite frankly, in my studies and in my preparation to get ready to be speaking and getting down and knowing and being knowledgeable about a plethora of football teams who I think can vie and compete for the national championship or making some noise and, going out there and doing that type of thing. I always concentrate first on the college football, and then, of course, on the side, I also am what's the word I'm looking for? I'm also gaining my knowledge when it comes to the NFL also. But, college football is where we're going to start because of the ever-changing but not yet changing season of football is on the horizon, as I mentioned, more than the NFL. The first game of the season for college football starts August 27th, which is less than 50 days, baby. You got the preseason rankings coming out, taking a look at Phil Steele and others. It's kind of like the same old when you're speaking about who's the top 5, who's the top 10, who's going to be the teams that are going to be the elite, who are the teams that are going to be the favorites when we're speaking about vying and competing and challenging and winning a national championship. The one thing that I thought at the beginning, because if you would have told me a few weeks ago before this stuff came out and such, and my mind wasn't squarely on college football, and you asked me which team was going to be number one in the country, I knew such teams as Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and Ohio State and Michigan and such would be right there. But I would be thinking after their victory over Alabama in the national championship game, that I thought Georgia would be the one that would be the preseason ranking, and the way that Kirby Smart, who just signed himself a 10-year, $112 million contract, congratulations to him, the way that Kirby Smart has been building that Georgia program to where it can replicate the elite football teams in college, and due to the fact that, yeah, Georgia lost a lot of talent, but because of their recruiting prowess over the last couple of years, they have more talent coming in. So they're not rebuilding, just like Alabama, just like Ohio State, just like all the top teams in the country on a consistent basis. Georgia has now reached that rarefied air where they're not rebuilding, they're reloading. Or you could say through their rebuilding, they are just now reloading with more talent and more NFL talent. So despite all the losses that they had on the defensive side of the field, I would have said that it would have been Georgia who would have been the number one team in the country, but I would have been wrong. Alabama, who I thought would have been number 3 or 4 at the very least, but Alabama, not Georgia, is the preseason number one. So Alabama last season 13-2, coming back, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young back for his junior year, leader of the offense, 7th in the nation overall, averaging close to 500 yards per game, 488 to be exact, 6th in scoring, averaging around 40 points per game, number 3 in the nation in third down conversions, threw for 47 touchdown passes and only 7 interceptions. So, yes, when you speak about offense, even though the offensive line needs to be rebuilt, even though the wide receivers need to be replaced, when you're speaking about John Michie and Jamison Williamson leaving for the NFL, and the offensive line losing a couple of draft picks on the offensive side of the ball, because this is Alabama, because Alabama has been used to consistently getting historically great recruiting classes. They're, of course, in the league of course, the ultimate we don't rebuild and we don't reload. And when you're speaking about someone in terms of Nick Saban as the coach and how many championships that he's won, generationally the greatest head football coach in college, then you give Alabama the benefit of the doubt, even though Alabama coming off of a season in which they lost 2 games, and I know that sounds ridiculous, and I know that sounds imbecilic to say, to go into a reference in terms of Alabama not having that typical Alabama-type season, because, God forbid, after 15 games played, they lost 2, including one in the national championship game, that somehow, some way, Alabama has to bounce back from that. But when you have been the elite of the elite, like Bama and Nick Saban has been over the last decade plus, that's the type of expectations that are, I guess you could say, realistic. And as I mentioned before, we give Alabama the benefit of the doubt. Okay, well, they lose some players from their offensive line. Okay, that's fine. You know what? They've got this guy coming in. They've got this 4-star. They've got this 5-star coming in. They've got this high-profile transfer coming in to solidify the offensive line, including the left tackle position. Well, how do we know that? How do we know that these guys who are going to be replacing NFL draft picks are going to be able to play at the same level? How do we know there's not going to be some type of transition that's going to cause Alabama not to be the Alabama that many people think that they're going to be when they've been ranked the preseason number 1? What about losing Jamison Williamson and John Mechie to the NFL? Okay, they picked up transfers from Georgia and Louisville when you're speaking about Jermaine Burton from Georgia and Terrell Harrell from Louisville. Okay, we're going to go on the assumption with Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator, with Bryce Young at the quarterback, that Alabama is going to just continue to be the squad on offense that is going to be that dominant. How do we know that that Burton and Harrell are going to be able to fit in as easily as Williams and Mechie, who wasn't a transfer for Alabama. He was recruited and played out his deal with the Crimson Tide. How do we know that these guys are going to be on the same level? How do we know that these guys are going to be just as effective? How do we know that these guys are going to be just as impactful? How do we know that all of these things are going to come down on the offensive side of the ball in terms of the offensive line is concerned? No matter how great your quarterback is, I mean, how many times in football have we seen that example? No matter how great your quarterback is, if it does not have an offensive line, and if it has to go back and pass all the time, unless you're a mega superstar like Patrick Mahomes, that's not advantageous for football teams to win championships. Just take a look at the team that was supposed to be the dynasty by now by winning their third or second championship, the Kansas City Football Squad. You saw what happened to them against a really great defense and no offensive line and no running game in the Super Bowl a few years ago against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, under the genius of a defensive coordinator named Todd Bowles, who's now the head coach, and a brilliant up-and-coming offensive coordinator in Byron Leftwich. We saw what happened with Kansas City. As great of a quarterback, generational great, headed toward one of the greatest who's ever played if he keeps up at this pace, Patrick Mahomes. We saw what happened when you don't have an offensive line and you don't have a running back to take some of the pressure off of Patrick Mahomes going back every single play. It's the same thing in college. No matter how great Alabama is, no matter how great Bryce Young is, you still need an offensive line. And if this offensive line is going to take time to gel, not taking a look, not checking Alabama's schedule to see if there are possible roadblocks, if there are possible booby traps that could cause Alabama a loss, what would that mean? Short-term and long-term, as the Crimson Tide gets that side of the ball's weaknesses. Speaking about the offense, the wide receivers replacing the running back Brian Robinson, who a bruiser, big guy. Who's going to be able to replace him? Who's going to be able to replace him? Do they have a style? Do they have a running back with his style that can replace him? All of these things have to be answered, at least on the offensive side for Alabama. But, on defense, hey, the defense should be elite. They've got one of the best players in college football, maybe the number one draft pick in the 2023 NFL draft. If there's any defensive player that could be invited to New York for the Heisman Trophy celebration and presentation, outside linebacker Will Anderson for Alabama. Will Anderson's the leader of that team, y'all. It's not Bryce Young. It's Will Anderson. Both on the field and off the field. When you're speaking about his production on the field, where he had 17.5 sacks, 34.5 tackles for losses, He is going to be the guy, and he's going to wreck shop, and he's going to wreak havoc. Secondary is deep and experienced. So Alabama on that side of the ball, which over the last couple of years, especially last year, we heard all this stuff about how great and how wonderful and how awesome that the defense was going to be. They didn't live up to that expectation. So let's see again with the with all the talk about this season, Alabama is going to be great and elite on defense. Unlike last season, let's see if the defense can hold up and shine and reach those expectations that many people have for them. Wendell's World of Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Other elite college football teams in the preseason, when you're speaking about Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Utah is up there. Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, let's go. Clemson, Texas A&M, all right there. Now, as I mentioned before, I took a look at multiple rankings. So, for the most part, the consensus is that Alabama, the number one ranked team in the country, Ohio State, the number two ranked team in the country. Then you get your Georgias, and you get your Clemsons, and you get your Texas A&Ms, and you get your Michigans, and you get others kind of swirling around the number 3 to about the number 11 or 12 ranked team in the country. The number 2 team on most people's thoughts and minds, people who do this for a living, as far as the number 2 ranked team in the country going into the 2022 NFL season, or college football season, Ohio State. There's another team who I guess you can say, because of, unlike Alabama, I mean, we have Ohio State, who has been consistently great. Ohio State, who has been consistently one of the elite
college football teams in the country over a certain period of time. But unlike Alabama, who have won championships during that time, at least with Ryan Day and near the end with Urban Meyer, we're speaking about an Ohio State team that has not won a championship. Now, because of the early season struggles of Clemson last year, that, a lot of people kind of forgot, out of sight, out of mind, in terms of when we're judging, when we're rating the best college football programs over a period of time, that without question, despite all of the accolades and despite all of the things that the Ohio State Buckeyes at the football program have achieved over the year, and why, just like Alabama going into the season and other seasons, despite the fact that they lost a multitude of talent, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, that they're still going to be ranked this high because of how well they recruit, that the guys that are going to be replacing guys who have been NFL first-round draft picks are going to be just as good, because just like the guys who were drafted in the NFL this past draft or a couple of drafts before, that they were 4- and 5-star recruits who replaced players from that program who were number 1 draft picks in the NFL. So the cycle continues, correct? So it's interesting, with all of the talent that Ohio State has, and all of the NFL draft picks and everything that's been going down since Urban Meyer came back to resuscitate that franchise after the debacle and after some of the sanctions that were levied on Ohio State and all those type of things. It's just interesting to see now the fact that all of those things, and yet and still, Ohio State over the past couple of years, are still looking for that opportunity to win themselves a championship. They've been in the playoffs, but they haven't gotten that opportunity to win that championship. So despite that, the expectations for Ohio State are still on the same level, or very close to the same level, as in Alabama, who have won national championships. In Ohio State, unless you probably lose to Alabama or some team like that, the expectations up there in Columbus for that football team is to compete and win championships. And last season, they weren't participants in the college football playoffs. Hence, it was a disappointing season for Ohio State, even though they went 11-2, even though they had to replace a lot of skilled players, including the quarterback in Justin Fields. And even though they had their stumbles and their fumbles and their bumbles earlier in the season, that past season, because of a porous defense and some things that needed to be worked out on that side of the ball. Despite all of those things, Ohio State went 11-2. Despite all of those things, they went to the Rose Bowl and beat Utah. But when you go 11-2, when you're not participating in the college football playoffs, which gives you an opportunity to win a championship, and you lose to Michigan the way that you did, for Ryan Day, for C.J. Stroud, and for that defense, it's time to I don't want to say payback or some nonsense or bullshit like that, or not saying that, put up or shut up or anything like that, but, they need to rebound, wrong sport. They need to, reach the expectations and show that was just an off year. Ohio State, an off year where you go 11-2 and win the Rose Bowl. Those are the expectations, man. Those are the expectations. But you take a look at this team coming back. They have the best young offensive talent in the country. You have an NFL first-round draft pick at quarterback in C.J. Stroud. You had the best NFL prospect, the wide receiver, with Jason Smith-Nigma, the redshirt sophomore, speaking about C.J., threw for over 4,400 yards, had 44 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions last season. His first year starting, by the way, Nigma, despite playing with NFL talent Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, he had over 1,600 yards, had 347 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl, one of the best performances in Rose Bowl history. So because of that, he has catapulted himself to be the guy that's going to be next in line in terms of the great Ohio State receiving player. Then you have Trayvon Henderson at the running back position, along with Mayan Williams, who combined for over 1,755 yards rushing and averaged almost 7 yards per carry. So offensively, along with returners on the offensive line, offensively, Ohio State is going to put up incredible, or should I say, Ohio State should be able to put up incredible numbers and really hit the ground running early in the season, because they're not incorporating any new talent at the most important positions, namely quarterback. It's going to be the defense for Ohio State that needs to improve. First 2 games of last season, when you're speaking about Minnesota and Oregon, Ohio State allowed 913 yards, 472 of them on the ground, and a combined 66 points against Oregon and Minnesota. That Oregon game at home in Columbus, they lost. So goodness gracious sakes alive, that, and the other. Had some other few hiccups. I think it was Ball State or a team from the MAC, or was it Toledo? One of those teams where Ohio State was kind of fumbling and stumbling around a little bit before Henderson saved the day with a late touchdown. But I think it was Toledo at home, to where it was a game that was more competitive than it should have been. And people were talking about what's going on with Ohio State and what's happening and this, that, and the other, and the defense stinks, and da-da-da. Then Ryan Day made the change at defensive coordinator position. Ohio State continued to win. They go in against Michigan State and then just blew them out. And it seemed like going into that game against Michigan, it was a situation where Ohio State is back on track in terms of them being one of the best teams in the country. And what they go ahead and beat Michigan, what they were doing, which they've been doing like a drum year after year after year, then we'll put them into the playoffs, and then we'll be good, and this, that, and the other. And then what happens? The defense regresses to its earlier mode at the end of the season. Against Michigan, a loss in which they got beat up, unless they got punked. They took Michigan took Ohio State's lunch money. They pushed them into the locker and shoved it shut. They put their face into the toilet and laughed as it went flush. Against Michigan and Utah, 1 loss, 1 win. The defense allowed 950 yards total, 523 yards rushing in the 2 games, and 87 points combined against Michigan and Utah. You gotta get it done, man. So when everything was all said and done, when the gumbo was finally made and you smelled it and tasted, it tasted like the defense was 81st in success rate, 93rd in passing, 71st in rushing, 123rd in red zone defense. So, the gumbo didn't taste too good. The gumbo on the offensive side was delicious. New Orleans couldn't have been doing it any better. The defense, though, that gumbo was taken, it is still nasty. The gumbo on defense was tasted like I made it. So there you go. But, we'll see what happens with Ohio State moving forward. As I mentioned before, the offense should be fine. It's the defense, and we'll find out what changes. I know they have themselves a new defensive coordinator, so we'll see what happens. Opening game weekend, best game of this early season, going up against Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame. So that'll be good. That'll be something else. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Speaking about Notre Dame, 11-2 this past season, losing to Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl. Biggest coaching hire, I guess you could say, in the past couple of years in college football, when you're speaking about Marcus Freeman, 36 years old, first time as a head coach, very limited experience, even being a coordinator, taking over one of the historically important and prudent programs, namely Ohio State. It's going to be interesting. Brian Kelly taking off for the opportunity to win a championship and for the money at LSU, a college football program and a university that's devoid of any type of moral fiber or character. So we're speaking about Brian Kelly saying, I can win at all costs. I'm going from one spectrum to another. I can actually go ahead and get players who are really supposed to be in college, but because they can run a 4.3 40, or they can throw a ball really fast, or they can, bench press 225 pounds 67 times? Sure. But he can't read past the third grade? That's okay. We'll take him. We're LSU. Notre Dame, that's not happening. So Brian Kelly was like, yeah, see you later on that one. So Marcus Freeman takes the job. This season for Notre Dame, the offensive line returns intact. They have the best tight end in the game in Michael Mayer. They have an All-American safety, Brandon Joseph, transferring in from Northwestern. They have one of the best edge rushers in the game in Isaiah Foxley, who is projected to be one of the first defensive players taken in next year's NFL draft. So the talent is there. I'm rooting for Marcus Freeman, y'all. Normally, I'm not a Notre Dame guy. Normally, I don't like Notre Dame, but this is historical. And I said this before, and I said this when I was doing my audio episode concerning the hiring of Marcus Freeman to be the coach for Notre Dame. When you speak about the problem that we have in college football in terms of lack of opportunity for qualified black men to be head coaches. We saw a situation where Tyrone Willingham, back in the day, the great job that he did at Stanford, a program that was similar in terms of his academic standards and who they could and couldn't recruit, and the job that he did at Stanford, getting them to the Rose Bowl, where I believe they beat Ron Dane in Wisconsin, which catapulted him to be a true candidate for the head coaching job at Notre Dame back in the day. And it was applauded and made news because this was the first time in Notre Dame's history in any sport, I believed, at that time, that they had hired a black man to be their coach of any of their programs. I mean, you think they would have done it in basketball, right? I mean, when in doubt. But no, not even in basketball, not in any of the sports. So when Tyrone Willingham was hired as the head football coach at Notre Dame, it was big news. It was huge news. It was just more than college football news. But after a pretty good start, he fizzled. He failed. And when you're speaking about opportunities given to black men, qualified black men, to be head coaches, especially at historically high-profile gigs like Notre Dame, and then we go to Charlie Strong at Texas, a hire because of the color of the skin that many people would consider something outside the box. You know, we're thinking outside the box here. And I still think Marcus Freeman falls into that. Notre Dame hiring this guy, 36 years old. And that's all part of the deal here in terms of thinking outside the box. Something that's different. Something that's new. Some people can define that as positive. Some people can define that as negative. But with Marcus Freeman being hired by Notre Dame, this is not just Notre Dame hiring the status quo, relatively old white guy to be the coach who had coached at a Power 5 school for a number of years or who have had some success. This is not a Bob Stoops hire, or this is not one of those type of hires that you would think a school as prestigious in terms of the football program is concerned would look to go after. I mean, when you're speaking about schools like Texas, speaking about schools, football programs like Notre Dame, that the college football coaches that they would go after would be well-known, established, highly successful white head coaches. Notre Dame flipped the script on this one. 36 years old, never been a head coach, limited experience as a coordinator, and he's black. All of that mixed into the storyline. Now, him being black might not be the number one story in terms of the qualification or the profile of Marcus Freeman being the head coach of Notre Dame, but it's there. You got to put it in the story. So it'll be interesting. His first game as head coach, interim, after Kelly left to take the LSU job. He lost to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State came back. So we'll see what happens. But this is important. And I'm quite sure Coach Freeman knows this also. It's more than just, wow, I got hired at Notre Dame. I've got to do well. I've got to do great. There's so much more now riding on his shoulders. Because unlike a black man getting a head coaching job, you know what? congratulations to Tony Elliott getting the head coaching job at Virginia. Elliott, who was the former offensive coordinator at Clemson, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, he coached all those guys. Congratulations. Fantastic, wonderful, awesome. Great opportunity. And thank you so much. Special dedication going out to the University of Virginia for hiring Tony Elliott, a guy in terms of getting a coaching opportunity he so richly deserved and should have had one long before he got his first opportunity this past offseason. But coaching at Virginia as a black man, as far as how successful it will be and how much it will impact black coaches, qualified black head coaching, getting jobs down the line, a whole lot different coaching at Virginia than it is Notre Dame. Tony Elliott could turn that Virginia program around, and it could be competing with the North Carolinas and the Clemsons and such in the ACC, and he could win 9 or 10 games a year. Fantastic, awesome, wonderful. It ain't going to move the needle the same way if Marcus Freeman has success at Notre Dame for black head coaches, qualified black head coaches to get themselves an opportunity. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. An opportunity. Don't give me integration, give me truth communication. Don't give me sorrow, I want equal opportunity to learn tomorrow. Give me schools and give me better books so I can read about myself and gain my true to looks. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. Thank you so much, James Brown. But that's what we're talking about here. That's the impact that Marcus Freeman had, and that's what he's going to be facing. Now, we're not asking him to go ahead and change people's mind in 1 year. I mean, this is not going to be a situation where this is going to be expedited in terms of black coaches getting themselves opportunity, qualified black head coaches getting opportunities to get jobs as head coaches in college football. This is not going to depend on the first year that Marcus Freeman is the coach at Notre Dame, but he's going to have to come right out the box and show that consistency to say that, you know what, that Notre Dame did make the right decision in hiring Marcus Freeman as the head coach. Because guess what? If Notre Dame would have hired another Charlie Weis and he flames out, white coaches are still going to get the opportunity to become head coaches at Notre Dame and at Texas and at USC and at Oklahoma and at Florida and at Alabama. Not so for black head coaches. Unfortunately, if Freeman does not do well after 3 years, and I'm quite sure that he'll get 3 years, unless things fall completely off the rails, and just from the outside looking in, taking a look at the character and other people who know Marcus Freeman, the way they talk about his moral fiber and his character and his morals and such, I don't think there's going to be anything untoward or anything devious or any cheating or any type of scandals. I mean, we're not. Marcus Freeman is not going to take his morals down to Barry Switzerville at the end of his Oklahoma tenure and start doing those type of things. But so because of that, because of him being a good man, they'll give Freeman at least 3 years. But he's got to get it done, and I'm rooting for him because, as I mentioned before, this is not just something in terms of him having success at Notre Dame. What does it mean to rejuvenate and revitalize and take that level and take that football program up another level? The ramifications of his success or failures are going to be felt or are going to be reverberated to a whole lot of folks and to a whole lot of folks in my community, in the black community who are qualified, who are looking for that opportunity to become head coaches in college football. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us, just speaking about what's happened and just going on a little bit about college football. Season's right around the corner, almost. I know that we're not into August yet. I know the first game starts August 27th, so we're looking at maybe 4 weeks, somewhere around there. I'm recording this on a Friday afternoon, but I'm excited, I'm hot, and I'm heavy. I'm bothered in terms of my happiness, in terms of my joy, in terms of my anticipation of getting this done. So, yeah, man, Georgia, the defending champions, as I mentioned before, I thought they would have been the number 1 ranked preseason team, but okay, you lose Trayvon Walker, who was the number 1 draft pick in the NFL by Jacksonville. Multiple other defensive players were drafted in the first round in this past NFL draft. When you're speaking about Jordan Davis and Kobe Dean and Quay Walker and such, defensive coordinator Dan Lemming has taken his talents to Eugene to become the head coach at Oregon. So there's going to be some transition, but Mr. $112 million man, Kirby Smart, he's built himself a program where, just like Ohio State, just like Alabama, you don't rebuild, you reload, or you rebuild while you're reloading. And Georgia's defense last season, Lord have mercy, gave up 270 yards, or should I say gave up an average of only 270 yards, 10 points per game. Number 1 in the nation in scoring defense and also red zone defense. Hello. Now, the offense, here's the deal with me, man. Are we going to give Stetson Bennett some love? Are we finally going to say, hey, you know what? There's more ways to skin a cat and win a championship? Because I still feel, in terms of college football fans out there from LA to SE, where the fuck is SE? SC? Fuck it. I still think that from coast to coast, I still feel that there's some folks out there who are like, man, Stetson Bennett, please. Stetson Bennett got on the Georgia defensive train, which led them to a championship, which led them to a Super Bowl. You kidding me? Or should have led them to a national championship. Come on, man. Start giving Stetson Bennett some respect, shall we? Last season, completed 65% of his passes, almost 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 7 picks. Okay, all right. Hey, you got me. You win. Congratulations. He wasn't C.J. Stroud. Okay? He wasn't Bryce Young. Okay? He wasn't the guy who was going to be passing the ball 45 to 50 times a game. Okay, I got it. I understand that Stetson Bennett is not going to be your guy if your defense is porous. I get it. I understand. Even at a school like Ohio State, even at a school like Alabama, if you take a look at last season, then you take a look at the defenses, especially with Ohio State. I understand if you say, well, you put Stetson Bennett on a team that had the defense of Ohio State last year. The Ohio State ain't winning championships. You put Stetson Bennett on the defense that was underachieving a bit at Alabama, guess what? They ain't winning a championship. Stetson Bennett is not that type of guy. Stetson Bennett is this generation's Trent Dilfer with the Baltimore Ravens in 2001. Trent Dilfer, yeah. Stetson Bennett is this generation's Brad Johnson with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when John Gruden led them to a championship and led them to a Super Bowl victory. Man, Stetson Bennett ain't the reason why Georgia won themselves that championship. It was that defense, Jack. You just mentioned, Wendell. 270 yards per game, 10 points per game on average. Number 1 in the nation in scoring defense and red zone defense. You tell me what Stetson Bennett did to lead them to a championship. Well, number 1, he didn't fuck anything up. Number 1, Stetson Bennett was consistent all the way around. And also, would you please remember, when you're speaking about Georgia and you're speaking about the offensive philosophy of Kirby Smart, he's not throwing the ball around the yard, 50 times. He's not asking his quarterbacks to go out and throw for 50 touchdowns. He's not running an offense with 4 or 5 receivers. He's not going the route of Mike Leach or Bill O'Brien or any fancy dancy offense or Lane Kiffin. That's not Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's going to play conventional football on offense and have the defense win them the football game. Bingo bongo. I don't give a damn who you are. If Bryce Young would have gone to if Bryce Young would have gone to Georgia, he would not have put up the numbers that he did at Alabama because Kirby Smart would not allow him to. As great as Bryce Young is, he's not passing that many times at Georgia. He's not throwing 47 touchdown passes at Georgia. Now, Bryce Young is still going to be great. Bryce Young is still going to be impactful. Bryce Young is still going to be the guy that, is still going to be talked about as a first-round NFL pick. But just the responsibility that he had at Notre Dame, at Alabama, he doesn't have that same. He's not going to have that same responsibility, or he wouldn't have the same responsibility at Georgia, because that's not what Kirby Smart is talking about. That's what Kirby Smart is not putting that stuff down. So Stetson Bennett is perfect for what Kirby Smart on offense wants him to do. Now, it's a situation where, you have to get into a shootout, or the defense has an off night, then what about this and what about that? Well, then, hey, what the hey? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But as of being quarterback for the University of Georgia, Stetson Bennett is perfect for him. And as I mentioned before, 65% of his passes, almost 3,000 yards and 29 touchdowns, along with 7 picks. He was outshone in one game, the SEC championship game against Alabama. And then we saw what happened in the championship game. Again, I get it. I understand. All right, defense. I understand that. I get that. I don't want to see Stetson Bennett have to go in have a shootout against Bryce Young or the quarterback for Kentucky or Florida. I don't want to have a situation. You don't want to be in a situation, if you're a Georgia fan, that has Stetson Bennett start trying to match points in terms of impact, in terms of responsibility of winning the game. You don't want to be in a game where Stetson Bennett is going to have to assume that role. I get it. I understand it. But, who else? There's nobody else. There's no break glass in case of emergency. All the 4- and 5-star recruits that were sitting behind Stetson Bennett, they transferred. They're out of there. So this is Stetson Bennett's team. And now with a year under his belt and the understanding that this is his team, that he does have the confidence in Kirby Smart, the coaches and such. This is not going to be a situation where he's going to have to be looking over his shoulder and such, because JT Daniels, the 5-star recruit from Los Angeles, is waiting in the wings. He doesn't have to worry about that stuff anymore. So for Stetson Bennett haters, you can yell and scream and complain all you want to. He's not being replaced. And the person that's replacing him, how do you know that he's that good? Why? Because he's some redshirt freshman who was a 3- or 4-star recruit? Come on, man. And Stetson Bennett and that defense, that's what's going to get you the formula to win football games. It worked last season to the nth degree, right? By winning yourselves a championship. So relax. Stetson Bennett is just fine. He's got a plethora of tight ends that are going to be NFL football players. The defense will be fine. Interesting game, though, in Georgia's season opener when going up against Oregon and Lemming, their former defensive coordinator. So it'll be interesting on that end. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. You know what? Before I hit the break, you know what I'm interested in with all of this nonsense is with college football is what's going to be going down with USC. What are your expectations? I asked this on my audio podcast also, talking about this. What are your expectations for USC? Hired Lincoln Riley, gave him a boatload of money, made a big deal. I guess as far as USC is concerned, this is probably the most significant news USC has made regarding the impact of the team on the field since, when did Carroll leave? 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. So we're speaking about over a decade that USC finally decided that they're going to try to join the elite college football club and hire themselves Lincoln Riley out of Oklahoma. What's going to be your expectations? Not down the road. I'm talking about for this year. Because last season they went 4-8. And over the last 4 seasons, they've gone 22-21. So what are we looking for Lincoln Riley? I'm quite sure when you pay a coach around $110 million, when there's new news reports coming out that USC bought both his home in Norman for $500,000 over the asking price and gave him $1 million bonus and are buying him and his family a $6 million home in L.A. So what does that mean for those in L.A.? $6 million. What does that mean? Two bathroom, 2-bedroom? When you're speaking about unlimited use of his private jet 24/7 for his family, you can sit there and you can debunk and you can say no, and that was taken out of context and that's not true. It's out there. It's out there in the ether. And when you're speaking about the stupidity of the population of the civilization in this society, they'll believe anything. Just take a look at who was president from 2016 to 2020. There'll be, there are millions upon millions of people who are gullible enough and dumb enough to believe anything, who don't really pay attention to facts if facts don't fit their views. So, yeah, you can sit there and debunk the myth that USC bought Lincoln Riley a home for $6 million, that USC bought both of his homes in Norman for over $500,000 of the asking price. You can believe all that stuff, but or you can have that as facts. Doesn't mean people are going to believe it or grasp it or even give it respect. So when again you have all of that on Lincoln Riley, who now, as I mentioned before, USC went 4-8. Last season, 22-21 over the last 4 seasons. Lincoln Riley is coming in to be the savior of USC football. This is going to be the guy. Do the same magic at USC that you did in Oklahoma. Oh, and guess what? You should have even more success. Why? Because you're in L.A., baby. You ain't in Norman, Oklahoma. I mean, this is L.A. You've got so much more in terms of fertile ground for recruiting, and many people will sit there and say, despite the success of Oklahoma over the years and as a football program, it could be an argument being made that the right guy with the right football team, the right guy, the coach of the USC football team, it could be an even stronger football program on a consistent basis than Oklahoma, especially when you're talking about the realignment of college football and where these teams are going. And you're seeing that Oklahoma is going to be going to the SEC. Even though USC is going to the Big Ten, that could be another advantage for Lincoln Riley in terms of bringing more success to USC than he had at Oklahoma, which, when you're speaking about, hey, man, it's 4 or 5 years that he was at Oklahoma, I mean, it was right there for him, 55-10 overall, 37-7 in the Big 12. When you're speaking about, the draft picks, when you're speaking about the Heisman Trophy winners, when you're speaking about the national rankings at the end of the year, 2017 he finished 3rd, 2018 he finished 4th, 2019 he finished 6th, 2020 he finished 6th again, and then 2021, oh my goodness gracious, he fell all the way to 10th. And I guess people will say, who have the glass half full on Lincoln Riley, he finished 10th in a season where he had one eye open looking for somewhere else to go. So, I mean, hey, the Big 12 Conference 3 times, finished 2nd once in his 5 years. You're talking about some of the team that he's bringing in or some of the players that he's bringing in. When you're talking about bringing in Caleb Williams, one of the rising sophomores, dark horse to win a Heisman Trophy or compete for the Heisman Trophy. When you're speaking about Riley bringing in Jordan Atkinson from Pittsburgh, who was their leading receiver. Bringing him in, you're talking about a whole bunch of transfers going to USC. What does that mean? We know that from the quarterback position, it's going to be fine. Because not only do you have Caleb Williams coming in, 5-star recruit, following him from Oklahoma. We saw what he did as far as when playing actual college football. But also, as far as recruits are concerned, he's bringing in Malachi Nelson, who committed to him when he was at Oklahoma, then is going to, and now is going to be following him to USC. So the quarterback position should be pretty well taken care of. Malachi Nelson is right up there with Arch Manning in terms of, great quarterbacks who can really have the opportunity to be exceptional as college quarterbacks. So from a standpoint right there, it should be great. It should be wonderful. But, I'm taking a look here and I'm taking a look at the expectations, and they're all over the place. Some folks, some publications, some prognosticators have USC right outside the top 10, and others have them like 20 in the 20s. So it all depends. How are they going to get all of these pieces to mesh? How are they going to get all of these players to go ahead and become a team? This collection of talent. So, yeah, man. And then, as much as we laud and applaud and hip hip hooray Lincoln Riley, I mean, this is a guy. Every single year at Oklahoma seemed to lose to a team that he wasn't supposed to be losing to. The defense was porous for a lot of the time there, and his bowl record is 1-3, and he hasn't won a national championship. Now, I might be nitpicking, sure, but when your task is to change the fortunes of USC, change the fortunes not by just winning 10 games and going to the Rose Bowl, even though now they're going into a tougher conference because of the Pac-12. We're speaking about a guy now who wants to bring the program back to the days of Pete Carroll when they were dominant. When you could make the argument that USC of that time was a dynasty. If those are the expectations, you're doggone right. I think it's fair to say, well, I mean, Lincoln Riley was 1-3. Did you take a look at the defenses at Oklahoma? I mean, how great is this guy if those are the expectations you are setting for him, and you take a look at the contract that he has, the money and the perks. So all of those things are going to be meshed into that stew to figure out exactly, what you're going to be getting with Lincoln Riley. So I don't know what to expect from Lincoln Riley in this first year. It'll be fun. It'll be nice to see college football west of the Mississippi actually mean something. At least one school is going to be worth paying attention to. So, I mean, just on that alone, I think it's great for USC in the program. So you're going to have 5-star recruits. You're going to have skill players. You're going to have, ESPN top 300 players from the, graduating class of 23 and 24 and 25 who are 4- and 5-star recruits in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and D.C. and Florida and Ohio and Kansas and such. Then all of a sudden they might want to stay up after dark and watch USC play. So that's a big impact for that program. But we'll see how we'll do. We'll see how they will do. And it'll be coming up sooner than expected, less than a month. College football right around the corner. Man, I cannot wait. Last segment of the program. Last segment of the podcast. Thank you so much, Wendell's World in Sports. Thank you so much for watching. Again, go ahead and subscribe, Wendell's World in Sports. Go ahead and push that like button. Leave a comment if you want to. If you want to go ahead and listen to this audio episode, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, all that good stuff. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Most importantly, enjoy the most unique, entertaining, thought-provoking sports talk podcast that you can listen to. Okay. Again, on my audio podcast, I said, you know what, at the end of the NBA season, I'm going to put it to bed, blah, blah, blah. And I was wrong. There's still some things that I want to talk about because Donovan Mitchell is open to be traded. James Harden re-signed. So there's some other news percolating about, and I guess, can you really put the NBA completely out of your mind with this whole Kevin Durant situation? Will he be traded? Will he not be traded? That has kind of gone underground in terms of, the interest in the everyday of, well, when's Kevin Durant going to be traded? Is he going to be traded to Is he going to be traded to Phoenix? Is he going to be traded to Miami? Is he going to be traded to Golden State? Is he going to stay with Brooklyn? It's like, when the Malaysia airline went down in the ocean, and it's kind of like, any news from today about Malaysia, the airline? Nope, they still haven't found it. Okay, what are we going to talk about this concerning the airline? I don't know. Remember when CNN and MSNBC, man, it was like around-the-clock coverage of when are they ever going to find this plane? And after a while, it just got to the point where it was kind of like, any new news? Nope, they still haven't found it. Any news concerning Malaysia other than they haven't found it? Nope, they haven't found it. Okay, do we have to talk about it? Yup. So what are we going to talk about? I don't know. Have they found it? Nope, I don't know. That's the same thing with Kevin Durant and his trade demand and his request, right? Today I'm going to talk about the NBA, and we've got to talk about Kevin Durant because he wants to be traded. What's the latest? Hasn't been traded. He hasn't been traded. Any news on when he's going to be traded? Nope. Any new thoughts or anything surrounding Kevin Durant? Nope. He's MIA and no news to report. So do we have to talk about him? Yep. So what are we going to talk about? I don't know. Let's talk about what happens if he gets traded to Phoenix? We did that already. What happens if he gets traded to Golden State? Did that already. What happens if he stays in Brooklyn? Did that already. Is there anything else that we could talk about concerning Kevin Durant? No. But we have to talk about him. Yes. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. That's what it's like, man. So it's like, that's why I had in my mindset, look, I'll talk about the NBA when something happens with Kevin Durant in terms of he's staying, he's going, whatever. But then again, I also forget about Donovan Mitchell. So I'll be bringing back the NBA to my audio episodes, but not, it won't be dominating the scene. It'll just be something where, I want to be talking about. But, the end of this podcast, the Portland Trailblazers, man. How about that? Huh? How about your Portland Trailblazers? The 2022 Las Vegas Summer League champions. Yeah. Yes. Beat the New York Knicks 85-77. Unbelievable. All I want to know is, Portland, Oregon, are you going to have a parade for those guys? Are you going to take them down the street? The streets lined with folks cheering from Portland to Astoria, from Eugene all the way up to the Washington-Portland or Washington-Oregon border? Are you guys coming down to the city of Portland to see that parade? Because the Trailblazers are your 2022 Las Vegas Summer League champions. What about ring night? Now, I know most of those guys aren't going to be on the roster when opening night comes, but are you going to be able to get those guys back from China or Slovenia or Paris or wherever they're going to be playing their pro basketball, or maybe call them up from the G League? Are you going to have them come in on ring night, opening night in the NBA, so they can flash and get their rings? Oh, they already have the rings. But what's going to be the happening? Because Lord knows, even with Dame signing for 2 more years and $121 million, Lord knows that the Portland Trail Blazers aren't going to be winning any kind of championships anytime soon. So do you just say, screw it, let's just go ahead and celebrate this? Because, I don't know, we haven't celebrated a championship since, 1977? So can we just, maybe talk about hip hip hooray, Portland Trail Blazers, 2022 Las Vegas Summer League champions. Wow, unbelievable. I just want to players, mainly the rookies that are going to be asked to have an impact on the team in terms of winning and all that type of stuff. The players from the Summer League that were of most interest and significance when you talk about Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith, those are the 3 guys that mainly folks were concentrating on. It would have been nice, really, for the Orlando Magic to have Banchero play more than 2 fucking games. Would have been nice. Guys, at the organization, guys, guess what? Banchero stated that as soon as Summer League is over, he's going to go back up to Seattle and play in Jamal Crawford's Summer League up there. So this is a situation. I don't know why you shut the guy down. You saw 2 games. He was great for 2 games, so let's shut him down. For what? Already we're putting that mentality on him that we're shutting him down for Summer League. And also, before I get into the discussing Banchero and Smith and Holmgren and such, man, we're now at the Summer League level where guys who are in their second year, who just finished their rookie year and could use some Summer League action, now even those guys aren't playing. How was it that Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green weren't playing for the Houston Rockets Summer League team? Or Alfred Swingen, the draft pick from Greece last year, who's like 19 years old now. How was he not playing in the Summer League? For Orlando, how was Jalen Suggs, who missed a lot of the season because of injury, how was he not playing in the Summer League this year? Is Mo Bamba still eligible? He should be playing in the Summer League this year. It was amazing. I was like, what are these guys doing? Why are these guys not playing? I mean, every rookie or every guy who's going into his second year in the NBA for the Summer League should have been playing. Should have been playing. Man, I if I were owning an NBA basketball team, like for instance, if I owned the Clippers and I had Steve Ballmer's money, first of all, if I had Steve Ballmer's money, every day would see me dancing in the street like Martha and the Vandellas and dancing on the ceiling like Lionel Richie and doing a James Brown and Funky Chicken too, because I would be so rich and have so much money. But if I'm Steve Ballmer, and I signed John Wall to a contract, and John Wall had to play basketball in essence for 2 years, I'm like, hey, man, can you get out on the floor for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 games, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and for Summer League with our team and get a run going? You know, just get the feeling back a little bit. As I mentioned before, the man hadn't played basketball in almost 2 years. And playing at the Drew League and playing those other, anything else, playing pickup ball at the at LA Fitness or any other sporting club, is not the same thing, where it's just shirts and skins and you guys are just doing your thing. If I'm Steve Ballmer, I just want to see John Wall play. I'm not asking him to play the entire Summer League and play 30 minutes a game or anything like that. But look, there's guys out there who aren't, in Summer League, the majority of those guys are just there for filler. You know what I'm saying? These guys aren't going to be on anybody's NBA radar in terms of rotation players, let alone making the league itself. So if I'm Steve Ballmer, it's just like, let me just, give him 10, 15 minutes a game for a couple of games just to get his confidence in there, just to get out there and play, just to, play in front of fans and all that type of stuff, and referees with whistles and all those type of things, and go through a practice again and those type of scenarios. But, this is a situation where I think Adam Silver has to step in and say something to these guys, because, you're promoting the Summer League and the NBA, the Summer League out here in Vegas, more for, take a look at tomorrow's stars, right? Take a look at tomorrow's stars begin their careers in Vegas and the Summer League. Kind of gets your appetite a little bit wet by watching these guys play for the upcoming season. Because now, look, we're at the end of July. You got August, September, October. It's going to be another 2 to 3 months at the very least before you hear or see any of these guys play again. So it's just a situation of, hey, man, let's just go out there and get these guys out there and running. So why are the Orlando Magic shutting down Paolo Banchero? Why are the Oklahoma City Thunder shutting down Chet Holmgren? Thank goodness for the Houston Rockets, they didn't do that with Jabari Smith, but I would have loved to see Jalen Green out here. I would have loved to see Kevin Porter Jr. out here. At the very least, give your fans some hope, even though it's Summer League, the mirage of these guys coming out and dominating non-NBA level players, to give your season ticket fans and to give your fans hope, so you can shape the narrative to say, hey, did you see Jalen Green, the way he's looking this summer? This guy looks fantastic. Did you see Kevin Porter? This guy's looking fantastic. Did you see Jalen Suggs to look like he's completely recovered from his injuries because he's looking fantastic? At least give your fans that. I don't want to see Jalen Suggs sitting there with Cole Anthony watching these guys playing in the Summer League. He should be out there with them. He should be trying to gain that experience and gain that chemistry with Paolo Banchero, just like Josh Giddey did with Chet Holmgren when they were playing for Oklahoma City in the Summer League. So I don't get it. I don't get it. But, as I mentioned before, if you're going to be advertising and broadcasting and pumping up the Las Vegas Summer League with the notion that people are going to tune in because they want to see the number 1 or the number 2 or the number 3 pick in the draft go out there and play, their appetite is not going to be satiated by only playing them twice. So, I mean, come on, man. We're already starting this, load management already. Paolo Banchero is 19 years old. Chet Holmgren is 20 years old. Jabari Smith is 19 years old. If you're so doggone worried about these guys getting injured, I mean, maybe you should restrict how much they should be training. Because, hell, they could pull a muscle training. They could pull a muscle weightlifting. They could break an ankle or pull an ACL, going ahead and playing 5-on-5 at the Y with pickup ball. I mean, if you're that scared, I mean, just wrap them up in bubble wrap and just pray to Jesus. So that's just Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. So very quickly, let me go ahead. Paolo Banchero, number 1 pick for the Orlando Magic. Great body, I think, 6'10", around, 240 pounds. The kid is 19 years old. As a physical specimen, he looks ripped, roaring, and ready to go. He has confidence shooting the ball up to around 20 feet, has the ability to play on the wing. I think if you're going to project Banchero 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, when he's going to be reaching 23, 24, 25 years of age, this is a guy who's going to develop a pretty decent stroke from the three-point line. Talking about the NBA three-point line with some consistency, a guy for the three-point line when he's 23, 24, 25, that might be able to shoot somewhere between 35 and 38% with 4 or 5 three-point attempts per game by the time he reaches that level. So, as I mentioned before, at 6'10", 240 at the age of 19, man, by the time that kid is like 23 years old, he won't be a kid anymore. He'll be about 6'10 and a half, 6'11", and weighing about 260 or 250, 255, somewhere around there. So he's going to grow into a pretty versatile 3-position player, I think, when he has the ability not only to guard both forward positions, power more than small, but I think if you play him on a small ball lineup at 6'10", 250, I mean, you can put him at a small ball center. Also, I think overall, his size and strength, when you're speaking about Banchero, is going to be his greatest advantage. I don't think he's not a quick twitch guy. I don't think that he's going to be jumping over people. I don't think he's going to be using athleticism in terms of speed and jumping ability. I think that he's not grounded. I'm not saying that by any ways, but I think he's going to be able to dominate. If he dominates, it's going to be because of his overall size and strength mixed in with good athleticism, not uber or unbelievable athleticism. But when you have that type of mix, you're speaking about you're speaking about LeBron James, who has that type of mix, maybe a Blake Griffin or something like that. I can see early in his career Banchero being a Aaron Gordon type basketball player for the first, from year 1 to year 3 or 4. If he's going to elevate his game, if he can have the same impact or have the same similarities of game that Aaron Gordon for the Denver Nuggets have, I think for Orlando, I think that's a good start to eventually what he can become. So, he has to work a little bit on his handles and such. Turned it over 10 times in 2 games in the Summer League, 8 times in the win against the Sacramento Kings. But, as I mentioned before, I think that in time, Banchero is going to be just fine. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Chet Holmgren, 20 years old, 7'1". My man weighs 195 pounds, which really means he's probably closer to 185 than he is 195. Which probably means he's a legit 7 feet tall, but this guy probably weighs around 189, 190 pounds. Man. Look, he's fluid. He's fundamentally sound for a big. He's got perimeter skills. Showed a nice step-back 3. Showed the ability to shoot the 3. Has a nice stroke from that range. Style of play, I think, is similar to Nikola Jokic. Of course, Jokic is on a whole different level of skill and size and everything, but just in terms of the type of style that they play, Holmgren is not Joel Embiid-ish to where he's going to be going down to the post and kind of dominating or using his size, physicality, his strength. That's not Chet Holmgren's style of play. His style of play is to try to beat you from the outside in other than inside out, even though Joel has a pretty good perimeter game and such. But, Holmgren just doesn't have that girth. Holmgren just doesn't have that frame. Here's the deal. I don't know. He's got great instincts, and that's great, man. That's wonderful. And people just kind of poo-poo or maybe mitigate the fact that he's so damn skinny. To say, well, there's no big deal, and the league is turning closer. I mean, we don't have to worry about him going up against, on Monday he's going to be going up against David Robinson, and then Tuesday it'll be Patrick Ewing, and then Wednesday it'll be Akeem Olajuwon. I mean, so I get it. I understand it. In today's world of NBA basketball, you don't have those type of centers. He's not going to be going up against Moses Malone. He's not going to be going up against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's not going to be going up against Artis Gilmore. He's not going to be going up against Bob Lanier. I get it. I understand it. So the fact that he's not, Lee Haney, Lou Ferrigno, as far as size and strength is concerned, I get it. The fact that he's a string bean, I get it when you try to mitigate no big deal because of the way that the game is played right now. Hey, man, he's still going to have to go up against these guys. And eventually, when he does grow into his size, where is he going to play? Is he going to be a Tim Duncan type hybrid of power forward center, where you start the game at the power forward and you end it as a center? Is he going to be a full-time center? Can he thrive in the league as a full-time center? Because he's going to be going up against Joel Embiid and Steven Adams and Anthony Davis and Jonas Valanciunas and Jokic and Nikola Vucevic and DeAndre Ayton and Brock Lopez and Mitchell Robinson and Rashard Holmes and Robert Williams. And all of these guys have one thing in common when it comes to them against Chet Holmgren. They are much bigger. They are much stronger. They are much more athletic. And shall I even throw in Jalen Duran, who gave Holmgren problems when Gonzaga played Memphis in the NCAA tournament because of the physicality and size and strength that Duran had going up against Holmgren? I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, the argument can be made that the Memphis Grizzlies are not going to change their plan of attack on offense and take the ball out of John Morant's hands so they can put Jonas Valanciunas in the post. No. Steven Adams in the post. Jonas was traded, sorry. The Memphis Grizzlies aren't going to tell Steven Adams to go into the post so we can feed you the ball 20 times against Chet Holmgren so you can beat them up. New Orleans is not going to be taking the ball out of Brandon Ingram's hands so they can place Jonas Valanciunas in the post so he can go up against Chet Holmgren. The same thing at these other places. Those are the centers. I didn't even mention players like Zion or Giannis or any of these other power forwards or forwards that are physical freaks with a lot of strength and size. I mean, when Giannis comes down the pike, when Giannis comes down the paint, what is 195-pound Chet Holmgren going to do? That's my thing. And here's another thing. So moving forward, my question is, I mean, he showed skills. Good off the talent dribble, get off the ball talent and that type of thing. Can put the ball on the floor. Has some nice perimeter moves for his size. But I mean, he doesn't have the athleticism. He doesn't have the overall athleticism that can compensate for how skinny he is. I mean, people talk about, Kevin Durant. Well, number one, Kevin Durant was never that skinny. Number two, Kevin Durant couldn't have been Kevin Durant what he is now if he remained that skinny. And number two, Kevin Durant is a forward, is a shooting forward, is a perimeter forward. Chet Holmgren doesn't have the perimeter skills or the sweet shooting stroke of a Kevin Durant. So people are up there talking about, Kevin Durant was skinny and he thrived. Yeah, Kevin Durant was also a better athlete than Chet Holmgren and played a different position and had a stronger skill set in terms of him being able to put the ball on the floor and in the basket. Chet Holmgren, I don't know what you do with the guy. Stretch forward, stretch five, But what is he going to be doing going up, trying to guard these big guys? These legit centers. Is he going to be a power forward? Is he going to be a center? And also, what type of physical tool? When Chet, when he finally matures, grows into his body, 6-7 years from now, what is that going to look like? Ideally, what will the Oklahoma City Thunder want Chet Holmgren to be in terms of weight-wise? What is going to be his ideal weight to play at, to be successful, to be dominant, to be the guy that's going to win championships, the all-star, the all-NBA player? What weight are we talking about? 230? 250? I mean, you can't get too big. In his frame, you're not going to... With his frame, you're never going to get him to 260 or 250. You're just not. If he's 195 now... I mean, if he gets up to maybe 225, 230 tops, is that going to be big enough? Is that going to be good enough? Is he going to be strong enough to be able to go up against these guys when his lateral quickness is nice, but it's not extraordinary? His timing, his instincts are fantastic, but as far as athleticism is concerned, I don't know. And getting back to my point, yeah, New Orleans isn't going to be posting up Jonas Valanciunas to try to take advantage of the lack of strength from Holmgren. Same thing with Memphis with Steven Adams. But I tell you what, you got to go get rebounds, don't you? You have to keep somebody off the glass, don't you? I mean, you have to guard them just a little bit, don't you? So if I'm one of these big guys, if I'm one of these strong guys like these men mountains who are as big as a mountain, like Adams or Valanciunas, you don't think I'm giving him some shots in the ribs when the ball goes up? You don't think when Valanciunas and Adams are going to be boxing out to get a rebound that they're not going to be putting their hips and dip it a little bit with more oomph and authority into the pelvis area of Chet Holmgren? And how many times for how many games is Chet Holmgren at 195 pounds going to be able to take that type of punishment? 30 games, 50 games, 80 games? I don't know. It'll be interesting. So for me, Holmgren is the biggest, interesting. Quickly, Jabari Smith. I think that for Houston, I think that he's going to have the ability to be a really good 3-and-D player in the league. I don't think he's going to be a number one player in the league for a team that's competing for a championship. Fundamentally sound on defense, has an absolutely beautiful look of stroke. Man, he's got himself a Halle Berry, Alexa Bliss type jump shot, which is absolutely beautiful. You see how I threw in Halle and Alexa, my gals? Unable to semi-consistently beat his man off the dribble, though. That's the thing that's kind of like, that's interesting. If you're not able to get to the rim against Summer League talent, are you just going to be a really good Mikal Bridges? Are you going to be the better version of Mikal Bridges? Which, if he is, fantastic. I think that's awesome. Because when you got guys who can score in the variety of ways that the Houston Rockets can with Kevin Porter Jr., if he could ever learn how to pass, and Jalen Green, if he ever learns what a good shot is, then, they've got something there. But as far as talent-wise, to put the ball on the floor and get baskets and get buckets, that job is going to be given to Jalen Green on the Rockets. It's going to be up to Jabari Smith now. He's going to be the guy on a team where they don't play any defense. When you're speaking about the young cats in Houston, that he's going to be that guy that's going to be their best defensive player. And I think that ultimately he can have a nice mixture of being a Draymond Green, Mikal Bridges type of player. And if the Houston Rockets get that, and Porter Jr. can grow up and mature as a man and a basketball player, along with Jalen Green as a basketball player, I think Houston has something. But Jabari Smith. I think the guy who might have the biggest impact on a team, as I mentioned before on my audio podcast episode of Wendell's World of Sports, is Keegan Murray of the Sacramento Kings. I think because of the role that he's going to play, the expectations that the team have, that he's not going to get the opportunity to put up the numbers that someone like a Banchero is going to get. But just in terms of him having the immediate impact on a team, I think Keegan Murray can be that guy. So You have Sacramento, new coach in Mike Brown, who's going to get those guys to play some defense. Then you've got De'Aaron Fox, who's 24, Domantas Sabonis, who's 26, and then Murray comes in at 21. Vivek Ranadive, owner of the Sacramento King, who has rightly been clowned on as an owner. Hey, man, he might have something here. And for the great fans of Sacramento, California, who follow the Kings, it's hope. It's hope. It's something, right? I mean, it's something. I mean, me being a Washington Wizards fan, I would love to be in the Sacramento Kings position. Because you have a chance. You have something here. You have something maybe here that you can build on, that you can grow on. So while Golden State and the Clippers and Dallas and Phoenix and Denver and Minnesota and New Orleans and Memphis and all those guys are doing their thing, because they're going to be, they're going to be the teams that are going to be vying for playoff spots and stuff. And when you're speaking about a healthy Los Angeles Clipper team and Golden State and Phoenix, now that DeAndre Ayton is back, and those guys are going to be competing for championships. But you're speaking about teams that might be in the same level as far as the age group as Sacramento, like Memphis and Dallas, maybe Minnesota, even though Rudy Gobert is not any spring chicken when compared to the age range of Memphis and New Orleans and Sacramento. Still is a situation where, hey, look, man, you can get De'Aaron Fox 28, Sabonis 30, Keegan Murray 25, keep that core together and build around them, then you might have something. I don't know if you got yourself a championship team, but for an organization that hadn't made the playoffs in 17 years, believe me, it'll be something. Sacramento's shooting for the playoffs. That's their goal this season, and Keegan Murray is going to have to play an important part of that. So some of the growing pains that Banchero and Holmgren and others are going to be allowed to work through, that's not going to be the case with Keegan Murray. But I think that he might be the best, when everything is all said and done, he might be the best player coming out of this draft. So we'll have to take a close look at that. All right, I'm out of here. I'm done. I am finished. I am through. Thank you so much for watching this podcast again. As I always say, come on, man. You know what we need to do. Love, peace, unity, amongst others. Listen, learn, educate yourself. Shut up when someone else is speaking in which you don't have the same background. You're not walking in the same shoes. You're not walking the same path. You haven't been through the same angst and ups and downs and that type of thing. So different races, different places, different faces. Regardless, we're speaking about different political affiliation, different people from different parts of the world, different parts of the globe, different communities, different religions, all those type of things, man. See what we can do to learn from each other so we can drop the ignorant stereotypes and learn and love each other for who you are as a human being, what's in your heart, and how you treat others, regardless of race and all that type of thing. That would be fantastic. It would be very much fantastic. R.I.P. to the Queen of Soul, the greatest of them all, Aretha Franklin. Wendell Wallace of Wendell's World in Sports. Get me out of here with some music.